So I'm going to go ahead and hit the record button. So we are now recording. So then you're going to say something like, hi, this is Lyle. Lyle, wait a minute, Hagen? Am I saying your last name right?
Close. Haugen.
Haugen. Okay. Wow. All right. I would not have guessed that in a million years, but Haugen. Okay. This is Lyle Haugen of type1simplified.com. And you are listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom Vroom Veer. Listen up. Something like that. And then I'll take that and put it on somebody else's show.
No worries. You don't want any like vroom, vroom,
You can do yes. Yeah, sure. Have fun. It's all about having fun. Please. Yeah. And if you want to screech at the end and crash, whatever you want to do.
No worries.
So whenever you're ready, I am ready.
Welcome, everyone. This is Lyle Haugen from type1simplified.com. I would like to welcome you to Jeff Smith's show, Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
I think that one was my favorite. I like that. Vroom, vroom, veer. You got the car thing going on. Well done, sir. Thank you. Perfect. All right. I'm going to hit stop, and I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Jennifer Leigh, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Outside of the leaf blower, everything's awesome. Okay. So you are at gracefulandgumption.com. So talk a little bit about how it's going and what you got going on and what you're excited about in your business.
Which part? So I started Graceful and Gumption a little over a year ago, January of 2018. And I basically started it for myself and having an outlet to write about whatever I wanted to write about. And I love writing. It's very therapeutic for me, but it also allows me to be vulnerable. And I was hoping to maybe share my story with a few people. And if I could help one person along the way, then I felt like it was worth it. It's also a great outlet for me, aside from my day job as a crisis management consultant.
Right.
So it's a awesome creative outlet, and it also is wonderful to be able to help people. So I started the blog and I started an Instagram as well, and have had amazing success with it, connecting with people all over the world.
Awesome.
From many different countries. So that's exciting. And a lot of it is just working on vulnerability with myself and working on sharing my story and being comfortable with it, and also hearing from other people and helping them in whatever way that I can.
That's amazing. So good for you. I checked it out. I like that you're going to cool and awesome places and bringing a photographer with you, I think, because the pictures are amazing. So good for you. And it looked like you had a really good time in Cabo.
I did. It's funny. So a couple things. So I'm very blessed with great friends that I strive to kind of bring on the journey with me. So if I can, I try to get friends to come with me on business trips. And it's been wonderful. It's a win-win because they get to enjoy it, and it helps to have someone hold the phone. But full disclaimer, most of my photos, believe it or not, are iPhone photos. And I am very big on, just as much as I'm doing vulnerability and writing, I'm very big on, I want people to see me in real life and be like, wow, she looks exactly the same.
Okay.
So that's huge for me. So part of that, and part of just being very authentic and transparent, is to also have very real photos. And for me, that means no photoshopping, no editing.
Yeah.
So I use natural light, and thank gosh for portrait mode on iPhone. And so 80% of them are done that way, unless it's like maybe in my home and I might use a photographer friend. But yeah.
Wow. but they all look amazing. So good job. And the food looks good too. I
love food. So
I gotta go to
can't
Cabo.
not do that.
My wife is addicted to taking pictures of food. So, if you could see our stream, it's full of food pictures. So
I've thought about that. I'm like, but I have too many side hustles as it is, but I'm right there with her. Nothing excites me more than a great meal in front of me.
No, I like taking pictures of landscapes. That's what So I want to compose and when we're hanging around in Japan, I'm taking pictures of landscapes and I'm always making fun of my wife because I'm like, okay, we're going to do contest mode. Who can frame this scene better? And I always win, but I think I'm just cheating. I don't know. Anyway.
Nice. Well, those are just as beautiful. I mean,
it's fun.
No matter what, it's so fun to kind of look back and reminisce about your trips and your memories.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I look at those pictures. I'm like, where the hell was that? That looks really cool. And I remember this. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So let's go back in time. This being Vroom Vroom Veer, we got to get your story out of here. So you weren't always, as you call yourself in your one sheet, this pit bull in a dress that we see before us now. So talk about Jennifer Leigh growing up. What were you like as a kid?
That's a good question. Similar. It's kind of interesting because I feel like as a child and in my teenage years, I definitely was more similar to who I am now than my whole 20s. So it's kind of interesting to look back on that. But I, for sure, from the age of 12 to 16, I would say, was very carefree. I loved to dance and I loved to just be goofy, and I was into fashion, but I just was kind of into my own weird fashion. Okay. And I just did what I wanted and I did what felt right. And so I think it's very interesting to kind of look back on that because from about 12 to 16, it was like that. And that was kind of before the serious, the serious of growing up and having to be an adult and
the bigger responsibility.
Get caught up in all of it. But it's kind of neat to remember those days and to see my smile back then, I think is really awesome. And I strive to hopefully give my kids that experience too for as long as possible.
Right. Okay. So where were you, I guess, what was your first job? Did you work in the cosmetics, health and beauty?
Oh, wow. First job. Well, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of crazy, but that's pretty much the story of my life.
Yeah. I like it.
So my first job was in Long Island, New York. Okay. And I love animals and I love farm animals. So as much as I'm a city person during the day, I am obsessed with farm animals. And so I was able to get a job at a vet at 14, 15, my first job. And
that's cool.
Lo and behold, the first day on the job, they put me in a room with a family that was putting their dog down. I'll never forget it. And I was in the room. And so they had put the dog down and I had to do everything. And I think it just really traumatized me.
Yeah, your first day. Ouch.
That was it. I never worked at a vet again. And then I turned to people and medicine. But that did it for me. So first day on the job, putting someone's dog down was just unreal at that age.
I can imagine. Maybe you're just not emotionally equipped to deal with something, that's pretty steep. I remember my dad, took the family dog in because it was just, really old, and just it was time kind of thing. And in those cases, you're just, the dog was really suffering kind of situation. So it's bittersweet. It still hurts, but it's not as bad. So I can understand how a kid could be seriously traumatized by that, especially on your first day. You think, yay, I'm going to get to work with animals. And this is the first thing you get. Wow.
Yeah, no, it was pretty intense. I think I lasted there a few weeks, and then I said, you know what, I don't think I can do this anymore. But I do remember buying my first pair of boots, and I did it. Like I hung in there enough to buy the boots that I wanted, that my
Okay.
mom was like,
Right.
you have to pay for your own boots. And I did it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever been more satisfied in my life to go to that outlet mall and buy the boots. But I've never forgotten it. It's a very vivid memory.
Right. Like
But after
there
I
was a
got
thing I wanted. I worked for money. I saved up and I bought them. Right. Yes.
yeah, and
It's
that
a very
here we
empowering
are.
scenario.
Here
yeah.
we are 16 years later and I'm the same exact way. But yes, I did do it.
Good for you. Okay. So what was the next, at some point you get like married. I know that, right?
Yeah. So my ex-husband and I got married when I was younger, and I started my career in hospice. Go
Oh,
figure.
right. Okay.
And so met him while I was in hospice, and we got together on the East Coast, and I was younger. So I was like 21, 22
Right.
when
Okay.
we met, and we ended up getting divorced and parting ways when I was 28. So
Okay.
a good amount of my 20s, for
Right.
sure, was in a relationship and committed to him.
Right. And that ended badly, I take it.
Sadly, it did.
Right.
It certainly brought us two beautiful twin boys.
Right,
and
right.
They just turned 6, so
Wow.
I don't have any regrets. I certainly, definitely am very aware now of what relationships take, and being, to your point, being vulnerable and really needing somebody and understanding what a true partnership is, and so a lot of growth from 28 to 32 for sure. But we do, yeah. I mean, we've come a long way, and he's a great person. I just think that it just wasn't meant to be long term for us.
No, I get it. And I think that's a hard lesson to learn. It's some people just aren't meant to be, pair bonded, however you want to call it, married. So you can be good on the friend level, maybe on the parent level, but not as a partnership. So that's tough.
Yeah, and I think there's such a stigma around divorce and around
It's
saying
like there's a failure. You're a failure, right? Like you
and
failed at something. Not really.
And I don't think it's really, I've never really looked at it like that,
No,
especially like as the years have gone on. I've looked at it as, you know what, I gave it my all, and I learned from it a lot, and I've grown as a person. And I think that's all you can do with anything in life, is as long as you've grown and you understand where the disconnects were, and you have to be able to forgive in life and move forward and not live in the past as much as you appreciate it, and say, hey, you know what, like I accept my past, I accept who I am today for it, but I can change today, and it's not defining who I am anymore. So for a while there was a lot of shame, and I think there's just that stigma that, oh my gosh, you're divorced. But I also look at it as,
who is this going to make me be, right? If I have that on me,
it doesn't really define us anymore. I think if anything, it's all about, okay, you know what, like this is who I am today, and that's what matters, is how I treat you today and what I've gone through to become who I am today. And so that's helped a lot.
I think those sorts of experiences for me, when I go through these, like a lot of times when you're going through something difficult, where you're experiencing emotions like shame and like you're feeling like you're not worthy, or you're not valuing yourself, or you're not, respecting yourself, you're pretending to yourself that you're somebody else. Does that make sense?
Right.
You
Absolutely.
don't even know, you've lost touch with who you actually are. And then you're pretending to be that person to other people. And when you can't keep maintaining the fallacy and they see the real you, there's the disconnect, right? So I think one of the key lessons I learned just like in the last, maybe 10 years or so, is I get in the most trouble when I'm just not being myself. And when I actually just be honest and try to be me as much as I can, things just maybe like people might go away. And, they just like, oh, okay, well, I was me and they didn't like it. And that's okay. That was,
Yeah.
I think that was like a very good lesson, from
Yeah,
me.
I think
Yeah.
it's just very, like, I couldn't ask for someone to be a better dad. Like, he is phenomenal dad to our boys, and
Oh, that's great.
he is a phenomenal person. And I think that's one thing that people kind of look at me and they're like, wait a minute, what? Like, you had such a bad divorce, but yet you speak highly of him and you try to push through that. And I think that, was it always like that? No, right? You go through those pieces of, it's very emotional and it is very difficult and you're hurt and both people are hurt. It's
Right.
not just one side. But then you try to see things through their eyes and you try to come from a place of compassion at all times. And I don't know if that's just how I am and how hospice has built me in my career and seeing people dying all the time and obviously like dogs. But I
Right.
think it's also important too that you got to stop for a second and put yourself in their shoes and say, you know what, like, I'm not perfect either. And
Right.
you just kind of come to that place of peace and say, you know what, this is a chapter that has closed. And I do think that's part of why I choose to blog too and why I try to get that out there, because it's not just about the stigma of being divorced. It's also about too many people, I think, are hung up on, okay, I'm still trying to be meddling in someone else's life and what's going on and who are they going to be with next. And especially when you add kids to the mix. And I think it's so important to just have a place of peace. And I want nothing but the best for him. I want the best person for him. I want the best life for him.
Right.
My kids are, 50% very much in his life as they are mine. And I think people get too stuck on the other things and the noise of it. And it's really not our place. And when you're in a good place when you really want that for someone.
Right. No, you learned a ton. So, I think like some people, like when they hit a wall or they go through some trauma, they can get like real bitter. Right. And I think that's where, what you're talking about, like people can say, I can't get it. How you can be so cool with your husband, ex-husband now. Right. It's like, and I see that in, a lot of people that I know, it's like, it's a tough lesson, right? So you're going to have a lot of work when you get into your consulting business because
it's
you're
true.
right. Being
It's
cool
so
with
true,
exes is like, you could sell that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best part is like all you can control is yourself and your reaction to things. And you really do. Like, you're in a good place and you've really grown when you can see things from someone else's viewpoint. And
Right.
I don't feel like I've ever sat around through my entire life and said, oh, I'm a victim. And there's many times that I could have done that. There's many times that people have done wrong by me. And someone might say the same about me at some point in life. And you have to be able to just rise above that. And it's the growth and it's the deep growth that I feel like that helps you come out on top. And most people don't go through it.
Right.
Most people don't want to do the work.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get into a relationship right away, or I'm going to just kind of coast through life in robotic mode. And that only gets you so far. And then you kind of get hit over and over and over. It's like hitting a brick wall.
Right.
But
yeah, that's basically, you just described the theme of this show. It's like you can either grow. So the robotic mode, we call that vrooming, right? Vroom, vroom, right? And then the veers are when you have some sort of crisis. Now you can either grow from the veer or you can, again, go back and get the lesson again. So that's, I think as you grow, then you're going to get more interesting veers if your experience is anything like mine.
It's so true. And I've worked with so many people and it's been amazing to see that. And one of the things that I've learned is if you don't grow and you're not kind of taking those moments and really rising above, you typically you have them again and it's a vicious cycle. And it could be a different person in the same exact scenario, or it could be the same person just comes back into your life and the same thing kind of happens again in a little bit of a different way. And so that's something huge that I see a lot with people is they choose not to see it. They choose not to acknowledge what's really going on. And they're just like, no, but it really just comes back around.
So let's talk a little bit about you had a business, right?
Sure.
Because that's kind of and it's interesting because we're saying it. You had a business, so talk about like starting the business. What was the business, and talk a little bit about it.
I had an organic skincare company that I created when my boys were 4 months old. That was pretty crazy, but that's typical for me. And
okay,
I love hospice. It's a huge part of my life, and I will always love it and cherish it. And I just got to the point that it was kind of around the clock and working in the hospital systems, and it just is not a 9 to 5.
Right.
And so it kind of prepared me for entrepreneurship in that sense, and my drive has always been there. But I decided to start a business just because I wanted more flexibility, and I had twin boys now, and I wanted to really make sure that I had a life where I was a little bit more present and could stop working for a couple hours, cook dinner, still be that mom that I wanted to be, but then also if I needed to pick back up, I could.
Okay.
So I started it in my garage and started making products that were vegan and safe for my skin, which was very sensitive. And it basically kind of took off in the sense that, other people were asking and they wanted a part of it. And it was all pretty much word of mouth. And I got it out there in the first year. And then it kind of took a shape of its own. And when you throw in like other people working for you and growing and selling it to other resorts and spas, and
wow,
that was very cool. I mean, the business development side of it was just incredible to kind of see it grow. But when you add in investors and you add in other people,
it totally changes.
It's like
totally
it's
changes.
like what the heck just happened?
What happened
and
to my baby? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like my vision and my values, and you're trying to collide that with other people, and it's not necessarily, it's like a marriage, right? It's not necessarily good or bad, but you're combining other people, and especially when you bring money and visions into the mix that you're not familiar with, it changes dynamics very quickly. And before you realize what the heck is happening, you're just like, I don't know how to get out of this. And it's like going to end badly no matter which direction you choose. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it did not really go as well as I thought it would. And I definitely worked my rear end off and then some to really get it there. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And it sometimes takes 2 or 3 businesses before you really catch your break and you keep going, and that, gumption comes into play and the resourcefulness to push forward no matter what and say, you know what, I'm just going to keep failing forward. But it didn't really get off the ground the way that I had hoped. And then going through a divorce obviously is very traumatic. So I kind of tabled that business and used it for a lot of wisdom to push forward and start something else. But I really knew no matter what that I love people, but at the end of the day, it's knowing that I'm making a difference and helping people in whatever way that is. And that's why I love being a consultant. I love working with different people in different scenarios because it's me. And at the end of the day, I know what my values stand for. I know what my integrity, like where it's at. And I know that my word is solid. And I can't control investors. I can't control other people. I can't do any of that. But I do know that. So that's why I like the whole one-man ship is good.
Amen. Yes. I can totally relate to all of that, because especially when you start using the outside money, then it people don't, and you probably didn't know that going in, right? I mean, but as soon as that happens, then you're sort of like inviting in all these other pressures that are going to make it something different, right? Is that the gist?
Absolutely. I mean, before you even know what's going on, you have an unbearable amount of pressure on you. And it took a huge toll on my body. And I think it was very eye-opening for me. But I think it's very sad because most people don't understand that. And to be a young female, especially in a very male dominated world, when you're dealing with investors and money, it is not easy to keep that going and to have people take you serious and to wear a dress. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's how I got the whole pit bull in a dress, because I finally was like, I can't deal with these guys anymore, like looking at my body up and down. And so it was very eye-opening in my 20s to really understand business and how it really worked and how ruthless it is.
Right. Wow. Yeah. It's, I get it. You grew, so that's good. But so how did you just sort of like end up just walking away off of that and just walking into something you knew better?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, it was just, okay, I need to close this chapter and I need to accept that
Yep.
wasn't working anymore. And I was like, here you go, but because it was my name and my brand and they're wanting to do all of that, it just wasn't really something that could go anywhere. And then I kind of just started to try to help myself, and I started meeting people and realizing that I was able to help them through my own traumas and my own perseverance. And I started to get one-off clients.
Really?
And some were on a personal level, some were professional, in the sense that, what I mean by that is, I was able to help someone else through a divorce, and I was able to help them identify all of the triggers and how do they move forward, and give them the tools that they already had to just kind of guide them. And then I also work with much larger companies, and they're restructuring their entire dynamic, and they're trying to culture, and they're trying to fire people and hire new people and just kind of create a new dynamic. So it's kind of really neat to be able to do both professional and personal.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that just sort of started, it sounds like some of my favorite kinds of businesses they just sort of like happen organically, if that makes sense, where people just say, hey, I want to pay you to do this. You say yes, and it works out, right? That's the best kind of business that you could.
It's so funny, but I tell people all the time that, because they're like, how did you end up in Minnesota, and how did you end up here, and how did you find your clients? And I'm like, it's really that simple. I came here to Minnesota when I closed my business and I left New York, and my ex is from here.
Okay.
And I just was like, okay, I have to do this. Like, this is what's best for my kids. This is going to be starting from square one. And I did it. And I said, okay, Jennifer, I came on my 30th birthday, and I'll never forget it. And so that was October 2016. And I said, you know what? I've got 90 days until January 1st. So October, November, December, to just go to every networking event I could find and look online, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, Google. And I just went to every event I could go to. And I just started out in a very general way. And I was like, I'm a consultant, but I'm looking for clients, and just trying to ask people, what do they need, and seeing if anything resonated with me. And so I did that for 90 days, which is amazing. And in January, I had several different opportunities, and I could choose what I wanted to do. But I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, I could go work at Walgreens, I could go,
that's amazing. Right.
But I did it. And
you already had done a business, and you knew like the pressures of, right. So that trauma at that point was actually making you a lot more resilient. Right. And that gumption came in, right? You had a whole pile of gumption, amazing. Right? Good for you.
So that's how I got to where I am today. And the people that I met back in the fall of 2016 are very much the people that are still in my life, that are clients of mine, and again, personal and professional. And it's so awesome for them to see me a couple years ago and to see me now. It's just insane, the growth for sure. But I kept going. So I used that as a launching platform to really get out there. And it was very organic. It kind of took a world of its own. And I started working with the people that really matched who I wanted to be. And then that kind of has created this amazing journey.
So, and it's like, I know I saw, I checked out your LinkedIn page. So, and that's you're covering like, yeah, you're doing like almost personal coaching, but you're also going into business. So you're still doing both.
I do both. I mean, I think that like for me, just being intuitive and empathetic, and I've always kind of been that, but it's definitely heightened more after my divorce and as I've got more in tune with myself. It is a little bit of a balancing act because I don't like to take on too many personal clients because it's very intense, when you're dealing with energy and change, and
Right.
I'm kind of taking that on. So I try to just kind of focus more on the professional world of it. And I love some personal clients, but I try to just take a few at a time because it does.
It's so draining, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot to do it right and to really help somebody. And so I think that it's just for me personally, there's a fine balance between, okay, is this working for my own life and am I too one way or the other? But yes, I do love both.
No, I can see that because I would imagine, so I can ask this question, like, I would imagine like if you go in to help a business, it's probably more brain work than heart work, right? if that's a good analogy, it's like, your head is like toast because you're doing a lot of analysis and computery stuff and, and you're working through things, but you're not pouring your heart out, kind of idea.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely intense in its own way and you're dealing with crisis after crisis, but it's a very it's just something I can do in my sleep. And I just feel like that's a gift that I have to be able to diffuse things and to just talk with people again, like from compassion and love, and just get people to understand that it's okay to have constructive criticism. It's okay that, we all are not perfect. We're human and people do make mistakes. So that part is great about it because I do love pouring compassion into companies and helping people grow on a professional level. But at the same time, there's nothing that beats seeing someone personally persevere and go through trauma and come out the other side and be their cheerleader. That for sure
very rewarding.
Yeah,
personally.
very rewarding in a complete turn of events compared to hospice and holding someone's hand as they pass on. So it's just night and day from when I was 21 compared to when I was 31, 32. So
wow, you've had quite a journey for as young as you are.
Definitely an old soul, and I've done more in my life in the last 12 years. Like I tell people all the time, I mean, my professional and life experience probably equates to someone in their mid to late 40s. And
probably,
I think that's probably why most of my friends are older, because they just get it and they understand it.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of, there's a lot of people now getting on board with, being authentic and vulnerable, but most people aren't. Let's just face it. I think in your life, your professional life, your personal life, you're spending a lot of time with people that are awakened or aware of these sort of like ideas and themes of, being vulnerable and being authentic is a really good goal, and it helps out. But, most of the people that you meet out there, right.
Yeah, it's like people use the words now, and it's like very buzzworthy, unfortunately, and it's a good and bad. But I still think that there's a lot of people are saying they're vulnerable, they're saying they're authentic, they're saying that they're very real, but are they really?
Right.
I mean, that's the thing where it's like,
are
you really being that way? Because you're not really authentic and you're not real if you're still putting 3 filters on your pictures, and and you're writing something, but yet like you're ready to pull your hair out and you're ready to scream at your kids, but at the same time, like you're posting a picture and you're perfectly put together and you're, like you got to just keep it real. And it's for me, there's no in between. It's all or nothing. And there's been times where I've gotten on social media and I've cried. And there's been times when I've put out there like, hey, I'm human. And even though I help people, I still go through my own stuff.
Right.
As the same time as, yes, like, do I have beautiful photos in different countries and do I get to do all this stuff? Absolutely, but there's still a lot of
You're still
blood,
human.
sweat, and tears. Yeah, that goes into that. Life is not easy, but I think it's great to use those words, but you have to have conviction behind it. Like, you have to stand behind it. And
Right.
I think we're getting there as a culture. We are getting there.
Totally.
But yeah, I always tell people, I don't know if you remember that movie, A Few Good Men, but it's my favorite line ever. And I tell people all the time, if you want the truth, you got to be able to handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
It's like the best thing ever. And I think that's why my clients professionally and personally have had success and they do work with me. You can say anything to anyone, but it's how you say it. And as long as you come from a place of compassion and love, it's like, hey, you know what? I really don't want to do that today. I am not feeling it. I would rather do something else. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I need to do what's best for me today. And I can't tell you how many people can't do that.
Right. Amen. Okay, so we got to wrap this up. We've got another show to record here pretty soon. So how can folks best get in touch with Jennifer Leigh?
You can always reach me on my website. It's gracefulandgumption.com. Same thing as Instagram. I have a lot of people that love to connect on that as well. And it's Graceful and Gumption. So I would love to connect with people and hear their own stories and chat some more.
I will link to both of those in the show notes, and I promise I won't call you a hypnotist. Promise.
Intuitive any day, but hypnotist, no, I can't take credit for that.
And if there's anything you want me to change in your show notes, I won't take 3 weeks to answer. Thank you, Jennifer. This has been a blast. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.